Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I help busy moms improve their sleep, improve their energy, and get their zest for life back by helping them change their habits. In my program, The Sleep Solution for Busy Moms, I work with exhausted busy moms to improve their nutrition and lifestyle habits to help them get a better night's sleep. And really, the focus in my program is about building habits. And I actually have a 5 step habit building blueprint that we use to follow to help us build healthy, helpful lifestyle habits. But I don't in my program talk a lot about breaking habits. And we focus more on the building, but I do want to just dive a little bit into breaking habits because as long as we're going to be building them, we'll also need to be breaking them. So I just want to take a few minutes today to kind of chat a little bit about how do we break a habit, what habits need to be broken, and where do we start. So, what is a bad habit exactly? I would argue a lot of habits are neutral. So, habits are these behaviors that exist in our sort of hindbrain where we don't think about them. They're just activities that we do without any conscious thought. So, let's take, for example, driving. Driving somewhere that you go on a regular basis. Maybe it's to your kids' school or work or an after school activity for your kids or wherever it is you need to drive. Chances are you're doing it out of habit. 99% of the time you take, even if you have options, you'll take the same route to work, to school, to whatever. And the reason for that is because we've got other stuff happening up here. We get in and everything just sort of moves to the back of our brain, and our subconscious, our unconscious, our habits take over. Now there's a lot of habits that we have that I would consider to be neutral habits. So if your habit is going to work always the same way, that is neither good nor bad, it's just neutral. But a bad habit or a good habit, good and bad are hard terms to define, and they are very subjective based on the people who define them. In the program, we talk about what are some good habits to set, but we don't talk a lot about the bad habits because a bad habit really, there is no hard and fast definition for it. It's something that is not serving you. So, biting your fingernails, for example, might be a really bad habit to someone and a completely neutral habit to somebody else. But at the end of the day, it's something that isn't serving you. Now, we all have bad habits. I do, you do, we're human. This is how it works. And if you cut your bad habits out, I guarantee there's going to be new ones sneaking in. So we'll talk about some ways to break some bad habits. But before we get into that, I'm just going to be a little upfront. What are some of my bad habits? I like to be transparent. I'm going to share. So some of my bad habits, I I'm in the habit, I always have something sweet or sugary or treat like to eat in the afternoon. For me, that's a bad habit. I love sugar. I love sweet. I don't limit it. I don't restrict it, but I am in the habit of having it every day. It's a habit I have tried to break in the past. I have broken in the past, but I keep coming back to it because I love it and I enjoy it. Is it a bad habit? I don't know. Again, it's a subjective thing, but I consider it for myself. It's not a great habit. I work too late into the evenings. I'm on my screens way too often. I do work out, but I sit way more than I'd like to. I would like to build the habit into, to do more quick walks in the day, but time is a problem. I have lots of bad habits, right? We're human. We all do. And so why do we have bad habits? Most of us have bad habits out of stress or boredom. And sometimes our habits are used as significant coping mechanisms. I'm going to pick on smoking here for a second. I'm not sure if you're a smoker or not. I'm personally not a smoker. I don't know that there are many people that would say smoking is a good habit. Um, Generally, in society today, it's seen that smoking is a bad habit. But for a lot of people, smoking is a coping mechanism. It's a way that they cope with anxiety or stress or frustration or change or uncomfortable emotions or really anything. And so for me to say smoking is a bad habit, you need to quit smoking without understanding the underlying drives for why you're smoking or why someone that you love is smoking is a little bit ignorant. We need to really understand the whole picture around a habit. And it's entirely possible that to break some of our bad habits, we're going to need support in other areas, maybe from family and friends, maybe from mental health supports like a psychologist, psychiatrist, counselors, psychotherapists, that kind of thing. So, really understanding the fact that sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's boredom, but sometimes that we use bad habits as a significant coping mechanism is something that we really need to be aware of before we even try to kick a habit to the curb. So I've got my top four recommendations for how to break a bad habit. So number one, make the habit more difficult to do. If your habit is always that you swing into the drive-through on your way to work for a coffee, but you'd rather take coffee from home, maybe you need to reroute your habit to go to work a different way. Maybe you have the habit of always grabbing, I don't know, a snack that isn't making you feel great. So making that more difficult might mean not buying that snack on a regular basis. Making the habit harder to do, separating yourself either distance wise or emotional mental wise, that can be the first, has to be the first step in breaking a habit. Because if you have a habit of eating gummy bears every day, let's say, it's not necessarily a bad one, but if it's one that you'd like to try to kick, having a tray of gummy bears by your desk is not going to help that. I have talked to a lot of people around food and habits around food and how some workplaces are very, very difficult because they want to avoid that, sweet indulgence at 10 o'clock in the morning that someone's going around passing around donuts or cookies. So it can be, if you're not separated from what the habit is that you'd like to break, it can be really, really hard to break it. So that is step one. Step two is highlight for yourself the benefit of avoiding these bad habits. If it's food that is not making you feel great, write that down in a journal. Reflect, be aware of that, and understand both like physically and mentally how that habit is making you feel and how it's not serving you. If you can continuously remind yourself of every time I eat this, I feel gross, or every time I reach for that, I don't feel good about myself, or every time I do something, it's making my relationship worse, whatever the case may be, if you can sort of remind yourself over and over again, repeatedly, that that's the case, that is going to make it easier for you to sort of dissociate yourself from the habit. A journal here can be your best friend. So a place that you can write, reflect, and then go back to see, because you can go, for me to say today, oh, I had those gummy bears and I didn't feel great. And then tomorrow I forgot how I felt about the gummy bears. So having a place to go back, a record of past experiences, can be really helpful for that as well. Use a habit buddy. If you have to answer to someone, if you have to be accountable, whether that's a coach, whether that's a spouse or a friend or something, if you need to be accountable to someone, you're much more likely to be aware and watch your behavior and watch where the habit's coming from if you're accountable to someone. So find a buddy to help you out. And then the fourth and final one would be use a reward system. So let's take smoking, for example. If you're trying to quit smoking, maybe every day that you don't smoke, you give yourself a, I don't know, it could be a point or a reward or whatever. What the reward will look like is up to you. Maybe your reward is going to be every bit that you don't spend on cigarettes goes into a separate account and you use that for a vacation. That's an amazing reward. Maybe it's that at the end of the week you get to buy yourself a new t-shirt. That's also a great reward. The reward is entirely individual. The system that you kind of have to build is entirely individual, but reward yourself for avoiding that behavior that isn't serving you. Reward systems, although I usually caution them around food, using food as a reward is not my recommendation, but there are some other great reward systems that can work really well to help incentivize you to break that negative behavior. Now, what if none of those recommendations work? The part that we have to really work on in breaking a habit is to move it from this automatic part of the brain up to the conscious part of the brain. Because chances are you'll do a habit, you'll engage with something, and you're not even aware of it till it's over. And so moving it from this out of the unaware part to the aware part is a really, really key thing. One of the strategies that I've read, which I thought was really, really interesting, and I like it a lot, is that every time you notice you're engaging in this habit, to, after it's done, immediately do something that a habit that you would like to implement. I'm going to use social media here as an example. Social media for a lot of us can be a pretty bad habit. We pick up our phone, we start scrolling, we put it down, and then 3 minutes later we think, oh, I must have missed something. We pick it up and we start scrolling through whatever social media, emails, doesn't really matter. But that habit of constantly checking for um, you know, feedback, social media, new things, that can be a bad habit that is not serving a lot of people. So if you find yourself mindlessly scrolling through Instagram and then you catch yourself and say, oh, this is the habit I want to break, immediately kind of there's no judgment. It's not like, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person. I should have been doing that. It's not about judgment. It's about separating yourself to say, okay, now I'm going to go stand up and do 10 squats, go for a walk for 10 minutes, have a glass of water. Whatever it is, pick something positive that you would also like to reinforce, because when we train our minds to be aware of that action that we just did, and then we kind of, it's sort of like we take it out of the loop and we put a new loop in, that helps to rewire our brain to take it from the unconscious, subconscious level to the conscious level. So you need to be very aware of the specific habit you're trying to break. Maybe your habit is scrolling Instagram mindlessly. Um, you have to be aware of that specific habit. And then as soon as you realize you're doing it, because chances are you're doing it, you start to do it mindlessly. As soon as you realize you're doing it, you say, okay, awareness, and you go and pick a paired habit that you want to do that with. And that will help you get out of this unconscious and into this more conscious loop of a habit. By associating the positive habit to occur immediately after the negative habit, you will actually completely rewire your brain. So it brings it to the conscious part. It's pretty interesting, actually. So, where to start? Like always with everything, the recommendation for where you should start is always with awareness. You can't change anything that you're not aware of. So, if you're spending too much time on Instagram, for an example, maybe grab an app that will track your app use on your phone. Write down the snack foods that you have every day. Write down the habits that you have before you go to bed. Maybe if you're on your screens too late, jot down, okay, tonight I was on my phone till 11:30. Tonight I was on my phone till 12:30. Awareness is the first step, because until we're aware of the fact that scrolling Instagram is having a negative impact on our lives, or being on our phones till 12:30 in the morning is having a negative impact on us, there's nothing we can do to change it. So, wherever you feel, it doesn't have to be a global awareness for you. It can start as a really small awareness, whether it's screen use or movement or food intake, or wherever you feel you need to kind of make a shift. Just start paying attention to that area of your life. Use a journal, make comments, remarks, write stuff down, ask friends and family for input. Hey, did you see me scroll Instagram today? Did you see me grab those gummy bears today? Whatever it is, awareness is the first step. And once you're aware, then all of a sudden this whole toolbox of how to make those changes opens up to you. So that is my recommendation on how to break habits, key 4 steps, but then also this sort of rewiring pattern. Let me know if you've tried this, if this works for you, if you have other tips or tricks on how to break habits. I'm very curious to see what's worked. If you need some help in setting up habits, in especially around nutrition, lifestyle habits, and especially if you're suffering from sleep issues, not being able to stay asleep or fall asleep, or you're waking up too early, reach out, let me know. This is what I'm here for. And any comments, questions, anything, throw them below and I'll answer them. Hope you have a great day.